your short-term memory can only retain 5 to 8 new pieces of information at a time. So oftentimes what students do is they have a big list and they just kind of go right down the list and write definitions for it. Maybe they'll write 30 definitions. If you do that without reviewing, you have just wasted your time. Because as you're going forward, you're just pushing things right out the back of your memory. They're never getting past your short-term memory. So the question becomes, how do you start converting these short-term memories into long-term memories? This is something that can very easily and very reliably be achieved by using a combination of spaced recall and chunking. So this might sound obvious, but in order to make a memory, you need to practice recalling something from memory. And spaced recall is when you are doing that while gradually increasing the length of time in between when you're retrieving that memory. And I will explain how to easily put this into practice very shortly. But first, chunking. Chunking is just the process of breaking your material down into smaller chunks so that you're reviewing as a unit. So in this case, our chunks are going to be our groups of 5 to 8 anatomical terms. When you're learning, the first time you try to recall a word should be literally the second after you learn it. So as soon as you learn that the word cephalic means head, you need to look away from your paper and think cephalic. I do suggest anybody that has trouble with spelling, instead of just defining the words in your lab book, you want to kind of start transferring the words over to another sheet of paper, because writing it is going to help you with your spelling immediately. So you go through that whole process for your first 5 to 8 terms. In the beginning, I recommend doing smaller groups, especially if they're weird words. So you learned the word, and then after each time, you either wrote it, thought it, or both. Now, once you have done that, you're going to flip over your paper and then write those 5 words you just learned from memory on a separate sheet of paper. So that is going to end up being your second recall. The first time you recalled the word was immediately 2 seconds after learning it. Now on the second recall, maybe it has been 3 to 5 minutes from the first time you've recalled it. You are increasing the length of time in between recalls. So cephalic, cervical, orbital, frontal, maybe, oh my God, you know there's a 5th word, but you just cannot get it out of your head. That is fine. That is normal. That is your human brain being a human brain. Just look back at the sheet, see what you missed, and you'll go, occipital. Typically what I say is if you're getting 80% of the group right, you're good to move on. You just may want to consider, are you going to have real trouble with that word? If you feel like it's a word you're really going to have trouble with, maybe consider bringing it with you to your next group of 5 words. You're going to do the same thing with your next group of 5 words. Write them down, think them, turn over the paper, write them again from memory. But once you have done that, right underneath it, without looking at your paper again, go back and recall that first set of terms from memory. So that will be your 3rd recall for that first set of terms. So that is the basic process. Every time you go forward, go back. Try to hit every group that you're learning in a session at least 3 to 4 times. Now, once you've learned it 3 to 4 times, you can stop going back to it every single time, but you're going to take those groups that you've gone over 3 or 4 times. Once you've got 3 or 4 of them, then you want to start practicing them in a random order. So once you've learned 20 to 30 terms, you need to make sure that you're not just going back and doing the whole group. You want to start mixing it up. So how do you do that? I think the easiest, most straightforward way is to just have a classmate, friend, family member quiz you by pointing to parts of their body in a random order. And that should be easy enough to do with a family member if you have a list like this, because they could just go right off the list. But remember, you need to make sure they're asking you the question in the quote right direction, meaning they should not be saying cephalic and then you say head. You know the word head. That's not what you're trying to learn from memory. They need to say head and you say cephalic or write it. Okay, so you can do the process, the entire process that I have just told you, and still be wasting your time if you don't remember to do this one last thing. You must remember anything you learn today, you must review it tomorrow, or you are going to lose most of it. The next day recall is kind of the cementing recall, so I suggest what you do is a technique called breadcrumbing. This is where when you're done studying for the day, you kind of look back at everything you've done and you make yourself a little list so that you have a little trail of breadcrumbs to follow tomorrow so that you can start recalling these words from memory. So your list might look something like this: head 10, arm 6, hand 5. That means you learned 10 regional terms to do with the head, 6 for the arm, and then with Mr. Blank sheet of paper, just write as many as you can out from memory. You're not going to remember every single one. That is just how your human brain is going to function. That is perfectly fine. Just at that point, once you've done everything you can, then you go back to your list. You look at the ones that you forgot, and you just kind of make a mental note of them and maybe make a list of terms that you are going to review as you move forward into your new words for that day. All right, that's all the advice I have for you today. I hope that was helpful. Have a great day and have fun learning.